As promised, joining me in studio, Deepak Anand is our next guest. And again, just to list off some of the stuff you've done is amazing. I can't do it all.
Right.
I don't know how you find the time. You were the former executive director of the Canadian National Medical Marijuana Association. You submitted a policy paper and, as I said earlier, met extensively with the task force set up to study cannabis legalization for recreational purposes here in Canada. An adjunct professor at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. And I love this, teaching Introduction to Professional Management of Medical Marijuana Facilities. Didn't even, again, that's like the first and only recognized course of its kind. Now you're involved in consulting with, again, as we mentioned in our business segment, huge business.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's just go back to the beginning for a second. How did you even get involved in this industry in the first place?
So I've been dealing in pharmaceuticals, 15 years of my life, and when I saw that Health Canada was coming up with what was the MMPR regulations at the time, I thought it was a good point to get into the industry. At that time, I realized that the industry didn't really have a voice, and so I decided to be that voice for the industry and set up an association, an industry association, to lobby on behalf of industry to government. And that's how I got started, really.
And how long ago was that?
That was 3 years ago.
Okay, and it's amazing. It's only been 3 years, but a lot's happened in 3 years. So, you're involved with the task force. You're offering your thoughts, your opinions on the way things are going. When you hear what's happened in Ontario as we get closer to July 2018 and the supposedly legalization day, Ontario wants to have the Liquor Control Board handle the marijuana distribution.
Right.
Good, bad? What's your take on that?
Well, I think it's going to be a major issue to have a provincial government sort of, regulate everything. I think they're looking at not just regulating where it's going to be sold and how it's going to be sold, but also the online element of it, which is very interesting. I don't know how they're going to be able to enforce those regulations. If, are they going to open every package coming in from outside of Ontario? It's bizarre. It seems bizarre to me. And not to mention the cost. I think that the biggest factor in this is going to be the cost. If you've got a provincial government heavily regulating this, I just think the cost is going to be passed on to the licensed producers who are going to be required to deliver this to the LCBO at a cheap price, and that's going to be an issue.
Oh, and again, then it becomes to the producers. Is it about just having the companies that are huge, the huge multinationals being the ones that are growing, or is there going to be space for the independent grower? I imagine most of the comments the government hears from folks are, we want to have it as mom and pop as possible.
Right.
But, the Liquor Control Board is probably the only one that said, hey, you know what, we should be running the show.
Yeah.
And yet that was the voice that was heard. What are some of the obstacles, you think? And not just with that. I mean, just as we move towards legalization, there was that euphoria at the beginning. Hey, they're going to do it, and they're going to make it legal. But as we get closer, it's not exactly that rainbow that everyone thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, on the flip side, the government did say they were going to legalize cannabis. They were going to eliminate the black market. But they didn't say it was going to happen July 1st, 2018. And I think everyone needs to understand and appreciate that the effort is there, the intent's there. I think eventually we'll be much better off with the system. I think the focus is really on the provinces. And, I think in BC, we're very unique in terms of this market and where it's at and in comparison to Ontario. So I think it's important that the provincial governments actually get it right, and that's very important.
What makes BC's unique, say different from other parts of the country?
Well, the dispensaries in Vancouver obviously predominantly have existed for a long period of time. The courts have ruled that the dispensaries in Vancouver are providing access, and therefore they remain open. The city of Vancouver has regulated these dispensaries, and I think they've done a fairly good job at regulating these dispensaries, given what they can do within their limitations.
It is kind of bizarre that there are dispensaries all over. It's still illegal. It's just a very gray area, and when it's gray, it's confusing.
It is, absolutely. It's, you've got the licensed producers on one hand where, you can buy product from a licensed producer, have it shipped to you by the mail, but it's a very cumbersome process. There's no touch and feel. While it's a good system on the mail order side, for some, it doesn't really work for the general public at large. And we're seeing those numbers. If you look at where products are going through the ACMPR, it's predominantly in either Ontario or Alberta. And BC is actually very low on the list of provinces that people are ordering this medical cannabis from.
We talked about, I think there was 61 stocks that are already being traded dealing with cannabis, and we're not legal yet. When we mentioned how big of a business this is, and that's why we're seeing this and the major players getting involved, how big of a business can this be?
Oh, it's going to be a massive business. I mean, if you look at those producers and those companies, you know, they're publicly traded, but they are, you know, they're providing a legal service at the moment, and that's medical cannabis. So I think the hype that you're seeing these days now is more towards the recreational market and anticipation of what's going to happen with that. But I mean, not all kinds of numbers have been thrown out. I mean, $1 billion is not out of reach for sure.
You know, it's amazing. You know, I think back to 20 years, let alone dispensaries and stocks. But here you are teaching a course at a legitimate college. It's not, you know, mail in to Bill's Delicatessen and college. It's a legit. It's Kwantlen College. How did that come about, too? Did you approach them about the idea, or how did that come about?
I did. In fact, I realized being in the industry that there wasn't sort of an education option out there, and it was very challenging. You know, KPU, being a publicly funded institution, had a number of reservations around launching a course, particularly on the cannabis side. I remember seeing, you know, the headlines in one of the newspapers saying "pot class," and ha ha ha, and very quickly that conversation changed. So being in the industry, I realized that there really wasn't an outlet that provided information and education. So I went to KPU, continuing studies at the time, and said, "Hey, have you thought about this?" And they said, "Well, no, but you know, let's hear it. What have you got to pitch?" So I pitched them this course, and you know, we've had 700 students go through the course to date from all over the world. And it's an online course that can be taken anywhere in Canada and the world for that matter.
And what does the course focus on?
It focuses on, so there's 4 main modules. It focuses very much on the regulations and the legal side of growing cannabis, marketing cannabis, as well as complying with the regulations in general.
Well, considering we don't know what the rules are, how hard is that to teach?
Well, so that's the misinformation I think most people have. We've got very stringent regulations by Health Canada called the ACMPR, and there's a number of compliance initiatives within that you actually need to be able to follow. So there's some real good guidance in terms of what needs to be done to grow cannabis for medical purposes.
Now, we were talking before we came on the air. No matter what happens July 2018, most of the guests that we've talked to over the last month or so, it's kind of going with the flow. It's ever changing. Nothing's written in stone. It's going to be evolving. Is that how you see it as well?
Absolutely. I think the Liberal government from day one has said it's going to be a phased-in approach. And I think what they mean by that is they're going to change the regulations. If you look at the way it's written even now, it looks like dried cannabis and cannabis oil is the only thing that will be permissible in July of 2018. Well, looking at the U.S. states, looking at, you know, the dispensaries, we know it's going to be edibles. Edibles are huge. So it's going to have to be introduced for this program.
Why wouldn't it be? Like, it seems silly not to. You're doing it already. It used to be the province newspaper, go big or go home. Like, really, like, why not?
Well, I think the federal government's very concerned that all hell is going to break loose, and it's not. I mean, if you look at the U.S. states, clearly everything's been okay. If you look at the dispensaries, we've got legal product happening today. So we're not really legalizing a drug that's illegal. We're just basically legitimizing that industry and that operation. And I think that's the important thing that people need to keep in mind.
One of my things, before I take a question from a viewer, is I always thought that they should earmark the taxes specifically for something. So those opposed would go, oh, okay, I see what the money's paying for. We're going to use the marijuana tax just to pay for kids' school playgrounds, or whatever it may be. Is that something that you've been involved in the discussions and offering advice? Is that something that could be in the works?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you look at Oregon, just yesterday they announced that they've spent $85 million in terms of tax revenue generated from cannabis sales towards schooling and education. I think the Liberal government has made it very clear that any money derived from this is going to be put back into education and health awareness campaigns, and I think that's important.
Yeah, it just can't get lost in general revenue. And we say this all the time, this is new money.
Yeah.
This isn't money that okay, so you didn't spend the money here, so you spent it here and we'll grab. No, this is money that they've never seen before, these tax dollars. That's what makes it exciting, I think, from a government standpoint, not just to go, oh my God, look, more money. What can we do with it? It should be the goal. That's what they should all be thinking. What can we do with it?
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%.
Let's take a look. I got, I didn't even have to have the lovely and talented Carmen bring it in. I have it all on my own. The matter, technology is amazing. This from Jeremy. Oh, are there any other schools that provide cannabis industry training? Are there any other courses you're aware of?
So recently, Niagara College just, I think about a couple of weeks ago, launched a program online that, not online, actually in person, where you could go in and take a course, and that takes 2 years to happen. So there are some courses in Canada coming online. KPU is working on a couple of courses. So I think there will be more as we go along.
Here, Zamir asks, where do you think the most job opportunities in the cannabis industry will be?
Well, I think most of the opportunities are going to be on the retail end. I mean, it's kind of unique. We don't know where the provinces are going to go with this, particularly in BC, Alberta. We have some indications. Currently, the jobs are on the growing side with licensed producers. I think if we were to see a retail setting, we'd see a lot more jobs on the retail end.
It's remarkable. Like, did you foresee this? I guess you did. It was 3 years ago. You saw which way it was going. You kind of got involved and said they need a spokesperson, a lobby, I guess, for lack of a better term. How fractured is the industry?
We've got, too many silos, I think.
I would think so,
There's a lot of people working in a lot of different silos. You've got the dispensary movement, which, is doing some great things, but they're operating in their own silos. We've got licensed producers, on the other hand, doing a lot of great things as well, but it is quite fragmented, and I think we need to all get together. And I think, to be quite honest, the legalization conversation in the provinces getting online will eliminate a lot of that, and eventually it'll be this big industry.
It almost has to be, doesn't it, for it to move to the next step? Too many, what is it, too many chefs in the kitchen.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, it spoils the recipe, or whatever the saying is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Before I let you go, where do you see us a year from now?
Well, I think that Canada is at the forefront of this. We're the only G7 nation to actually legalize cannabis. I think that we've certainly set up on the world stage Canada to be a leader on the cannabis file, and I see us doing very well on it. The rest of the world are ready. Australia, Jamaica, Colombia, they're all coming online. Germany is importing products from us, as is Australia. So I think on the international side, we're really going to grow. But I think I'm quite proud of us as a nation to legalize this.
It was funny. I thought for the longest time Canada avoided the conversation because we didn't want to anger our neighbors to the south, and yet it was them. Washington State and Oregon and Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
They the ones who did it. And then, we missed the boat. We should have been doing this 15 years ago. The amount of money we would have raised and spent on, hopefully good projects.
Oh, absolutely.
Would have been amazing.
No, 100%.
Deepak, thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Deepak Anand. And as mentioned, your resume is unbelievable. What are you doing right now?
So I'm currently working with a licensed producer called Zenibus, and that's my current position.
But see, that's interesting. So they're a licensed producer.
Yes.
But they're not a distributor.
No, so it's very interesting the way Health Canada has created this program. Is we've got a license to cultivate, but we can't sell yet. So we need to apply for a different license.
That doesn't even make sense. You have a license to open a restaurant, but you can't sell to customers.
Yes, I mean, and
just stockpiling the food.
Yeah, well, that's essentially what we're doing at the moment. But hopefully, with legalization coming online, Health Canada streamlines the process on how we can be able to grow and sell fairly quickly.